Welcome to CYF Spotlight, presented by the Farmington Hills Farmington Commission on Children, Youth, and Families. The Commission is a joint agency of the cities of Farmington Hills and Farmington. Its purpose is to foster a healthy community by focusing on our most precious resources, our children and our families. The Commission is made up of dedicated volunteers and community activists from all walks of life. Working together with other groups and agencies in the community, the Commission creates and promotes programs with one goal: to encourage a supportive environment where children, youth, and families are happy, healthy, educated, and safe, and have the opportunity to reach their full potential. The Commission is hosting this show to bring our focus and our activities to the community. We welcome your input and involvement. You can learn more about the Commission at our website at www.cyf.us. I'm Mary Mullison, and welcome to CYF Spotlight. According to the U.S. Department of Labor, the average American works 20% more now than in 1973 and has 32% less free time per week. When asked if they feel if they had enough time with their children, 70% of fathers and mothers want more time with their children. On today's CYF Spotlight, we're going to talk about overprogramming our families. And our guest today is Lynne Schreiber. Welcome, Lynne.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming and joining us and talking about this important thing. I think that many families feel that they are overprogrammed. Can you kind of describe what you would call overprogramming?
I think that the definition varies from family to family, but I can tell you how it feels to me when we don't have enough time to get everything done. When we pick up the kids from school and we race to an activity and we can't think ahead about how we're going to get dinner on the table, and then wait, we need baths and showers and homework, and then the kids are going to bed at 9 or 10 o'clock. It's just not enough time for everything that we want to do or need to do.
In our house, we kind of call that our patchwork quilt, where different parents are taking different kids to different activities because we can't all manage to go. They're all overlapping and at the same time, different conflicting things. It's hard for a family to put all that together.
Sure.
Are we finding that this affects how families relate to each other?
Well, I think we have to take it a step back and say, are families relating to each other, first of all? One of the things I know we'll talk about a little bit later is all of the modes of technology that we're so mired in, both in our work and at home. And I think that our society as a whole is losing that ability to connect, which makes it ever more important at the family level to slow down, to take a look at what we're doing, and to ask that question periodically: are we connecting? And if not, how can we rectify that and make sure that our family does its job? The nuclear family's role is to have a nurturing environment in which to raise children and provide a framework of values and of quality time and of focus so that they can grow up and be contributing meaningfully to society. If they don't get what they need at that foundational level, they'll never get it and they'll never be able to give it back.
Right. You recently wrote an article for Metro Parent, and in it you talked about overprogramming. Can you tell us a little bit more about the article and what it covered?
Sure. Several of the topics that have been sort of wrapped together in this article were the lost art of play, how important it is for children to be able to have that playtime, that free time, and what do families do when they just have too much on their plate. So that article really focused on what is the problem and what are some solutions. I did speak a little bit in the beginning of the article about my own experience, and as a mom of 3 children, blending families right now, so I will be gaining a stepdaughter soon, I'm very zealous about not overprogramming. And yet I found myself really running from activity to activity. I personally had established a goal of no more than 1 activity per child on an extracurricular basis. And it was pretty easy to maintain that. Not all of my children had activities at the same time, and so maybe one season we had soccer and then another we had dance, and it was very manageable. And suddenly this season we had soccer, we had dance, we had music lessons and religious lessons, and whoa, all of a sudden we couldn't get a healthy dinner on the table, and I couldn't be in 2 places at once. So I addressed that and talked about different solutions for ourselves and for other families.
Good. Maybe we'll get a chance to talk about some of those solutions, because I think a lot of families in this area especially, there's so many offerings, there's so many things to do, sports, and as you said, things have their own season. However, we start doing something and then it continues on to the next year. You begin Girl Scouts, say, but you're in Girl Scouts for the next year, but you want to do soccer too.
Right.
You add those things. So yeah, we always had that one activity per year too. It works pretty well through the elementary years, and then as you get on into high school, it makes it very difficult because they have so many other interests.
Absolutely. My youngest is turning 5, and I'm his soccer coach. And in the fall it was easy and came off without a hitch. And then this spring he said, I also want to play baseball. And I looked into it. I have a friend, another mom who manages that league. And in fact, we could get him on a team, but I couldn't wrap my head around it. I couldn't figure out how we were going to do both sports for this one child.
Right.
And so I said no. I said, we will do soccer. And if you want to do baseball at another time, we can do that. He's only 5 years old.
Right.
Even, older kids, it gets more competitive, more intense, more practices, more games. But they're just kids, and I'm not looking to raise Olympians. I'm looking to raise healthy, happy individuals.
And we want our kids to be well-rounded, so
Yes.
we want them to do activities outside of school, and they don't get a lot of physical activity in school always.
Right.
With things being cut, gym being cut,
Yes.
phys ed, all of that. They don't have as much recess time, that sort of thing.
Right.
So it's something we want to encourage. Also, as I was saying before, we have so many activities around here, in areas like this. It's all very enticing, like the baseball for your son.
Sure.
His friends are doing it, he wants to do it, so it's really hard to do that.
Right.
How can you tell if a family is becoming overprogrammed?
Well, it's the simple characteristic of too many things to do, not enough time to do it. And when a parent starts getting really stressed out about how to juggle it all, or the kids seem to be, falling asleep at the dinner table, or have short tempers because they're not getting enough sleep. I'm not a stickler on sleep, but I do know that we all, adults included, need that right amount, and children need much more. If you pack too much in, something is lost. Whether it's your ability to focus, your physical shape, your sleep, something is lost. And so when you realize that you can't juggle it, you're losing things, you're forgetting things, it's time to take a step back, and maybe even writing it down helps. And put your calendar on a piece of paper and look at it, and if it makes your head spin, it's time to cancel some things out of that. Absolutely.
So we've talked about it being sort of kid-driven, like the kids are interested in this and the kids are interested in that. Sometimes I feel parents tend to decide that things are good for their kids to do and push them into doing maybe too many things.
Yep. It's a chicken and egg question. Where does it come from? And I really believe with little children, it comes more from the parents than from the children. And I think it's a subtle pressure in our society today. The research is showing that more and more kids are applying to college than ever before. And even if we're not really consciously aware of it, the pressures to set our kids on the path to get into a good school start when they're in preschool. We're not aware that this is going on, but all the articles we're reading, what other parents are doing, the messages we're getting from schools are subtly telling us that we better get on track right away, which doesn't feel that makes sense at all. The gut reaction is, they're just 3, 4, 5, 7. Why should I care right now about college? But the reality is, as parents of teenagers see, it's not good enough anymore to just have a high grade point. Even wonderful schools like University of Michigan in our own backyard, Michigan State University, the top students are getting waitlisted as opposed to breezing right in. And why is that? Because thankfully we have a country now where most people are aiming to go to college. That never happened in our history before. So the colleges are getting more selective, and it's a trickle-down effect. So parents from an earlier stage are feeling they need to make their children into superstars in a lot of different realms so that they're perfectly positioned later on. And I believe it comes from a lot of directions. I don't think it's a malicious intent at all. I think it's really unconscious that we're not realizing this is what we're being propelled toward.
Certainly with the colleges and the pressure for success, and all the well-rounded must have this on the application, must have that. As you said, grade point is not, and test scores are not enough.
Right.
You've got to have volunteer work, that takes time.
Yes.
You've got to have sports and activities and groups and clubs and show that you are well-rounded and can act in a group and be successful in a situation like that. And you're right, that starts way, way earlier than we used to start things like that.
Certainly. And I'll tell you, Mary, I'm the kind of person, I've always been this way, where I don't follow the crowd. So my instinct is to say, are you crazy? I'm not going to schedule my toddler or my preschooler in 5 different activities because that's too much. And I do believe that my children will do fine in life. They will, and all of our children will, if we instill in them the values and the character that we believe make good people. So whether it's Michigan or Michigan State or whatever college they go to, they will go to college. And it's not what college they go to or even necessarily what grades they get, it's who they are and what they do with their life. We all know we went to university, we did certain things, we passed tests, and we found great mentors. It's what we do with our days that makes us who we are and determines where we go next. And I try to keep that in mind with my own family because I'm not going to let any of us get crazy about what if we don't do this today, we won't get here tomorrow. They're all going to be fine. I really know it. They will.
Different opportunities will come up.
Yes.
As parents, though, we want all opportunities to be open for our kids, and I think that sort of pushes us a little bit to make sure they're ready for this, in case later on they decide to do this or decide to do that.
Sure.
Our lives were probably not like that. I mean, I don't think mine was. I had kind of a path that I could go on. You could meander off a little bit, but
sure.
I think all parents just want to open the world to their children, though.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So that's a huge pressure in that realm.
Mm-hmm.
Is it stressful for both kids and parents to have so many activities going on?
Absolutely. There's no question. It has a negative impact on everybody, on the family pet. It's just too much running around. And it's just, it's easy to simplify, to take a step back every so often, maybe even quarterly, and take a look at what's on our plate. And do we want all of this to be on our plate? It's really powerful to be able to say no. And it doesn't mean that you're letting down a friend or your school or your child or yourself, but is this what we want our weekend to be about? What is important for our family right now? Sometimes it's driven by the kids, sometimes by the adults. I think it needs to be a balance of both. And we all need quiet time because that's when we think, it's when we develop our thoughts, when we grow and breathe. It's really crucial.
Do you feel like you're having to be the bad guy, though,
sometimes,
when you have to say no and have to deny the kid an opportunity to go do what his buddy is doing?
But isn't that the job of a parent? I remember my parents saying no, and they're good parents, and I still go to them when I need some direction. Mm-hmm. It's our job to create a balance, and it has to start with ourselves. If we can't have a balance as adults, we're not going to do well for our children. So it's important with work and with family and with our marriages and with our friends, with ourselves, to make sure we have a balance of time and attention on all of these important categories of our lives. The physical fitness question that you mentioned, we certainly want our children to be active, to get regular exercise, but if we're not doing it for ourselves, then they're not going to get that lesson. It's do as I say, not as I do. That doesn't really work. Right. So as adults, we have to build a life of balance, and then that will trickle down to our families too.
I think as a grown-up, I look around at other friends, and most of them are friends of my children's classmates.
Sure.
Or parents, excuse me, of my children's classmates, and they tend to program the kids and make sure the kids are doing this and the kids get that. And they're like last on their list. Mm-hmm. They don't get to do the things they want to do because the kids are so busy doing this or that. Do you feel like it's important for parents then to be able to take some time for themselves?
Absolutely.
And the balance that you talked about certainly brought me to that thought.
Absolutely. I'll tell you from my perspective, I am divorced from my children's father. I'm getting remarried in a few weeks. And I certainly don't wish divorce on anyone. We all would love to have our families intact and succeed. But what I learned by being divorced, there were certain times that my kids were not with me. They're with me 80% of the time. And so I was forced to take that time. I found I exercised, I read a book, I caught up on work, I saw friends. I slowed down a little bit for myself. And so then when the kids came back, I was better positioned to be with them. And I rarely leave my kids when they're with me. As I said, they're with me 80% of the time because I love being with them and I love giving them the attention that they need, but I have a built-in break. And so most parents who are not divorced don't have a built-in break, and it's important to build it in themselves, not to feel guilty about it, not to think that they're doing an injustice to their children. In fact, it's a gift to your children that you be calm and happy, in healthy, in good shape, well-rounded yourself, and then you can model that for your children, and then you have more patience and attention and joy when you're with them. Mm-hmm. So I learned it the hard way, but I'm grateful for that lesson, and I think that if all parents can build that in for themselves, even little bits, cup of coffee, an hour to read a book, maybe it's getting up a little earlier, or if you're a night person, staying up after the kids go to bed and just taking that time to walk around the neighborhood. Something so that you're doing for yourself, because then they'll see that and they'll model it too.
I think the modeling is an important thing, and it doesn't always come to fruition as they're young. They may not notice it, but I look back at things that my parents did now and think about them. I don't look at them the same way as I did when I was a child. You understand them a little bit better and you see. So some of the things that we are modeling as parents in this over-programmed life will be looked back on as they become parents too. It's not just getting them through childhood and through into college and ready to go.
It's the kind of person you are. And I'll give you a great example. A couple summers ago, we belong to a gym that has an outdoor pool. And the kids love to go swimming in the summer. And I swim laps for exercise, especially when it's beautiful out and I can be in the sun and just the calm of the water. So we went and I put them in the child care center for an hour so I could swim laps, and then we were all going to go to the pool. And my eldest said, "Why do you have to swim laps? Why can't we just go to the pool right now?" And I said, "Because I'll be a better mommy and I will be calmer if I take 1 hour to do some exercise." And so if ever I get short or I lose patience, he'll say to me now, "I think you need to go swim laps, Mommy." And it was a great exercise for me and for him, because we both realized that everybody needs a break, even our kids. Sometimes they need some time alone. And I've taught my kids that as well, that, if you're not in the mood to be around anybody, go in the other room. Take your book, go play in the backyard, do something so that you're better to be around other people when you come back. It's important.
So we are, as we're overprogrammed, we're constantly around other people too. Value of solitude? What?
Oh, wow. Well, there have been so many poets over the years and the centuries who've written about the power of the natural world and solitude, and I think they go hand in hand. So not only do we need time alone, it cannot be closed off in our houses. There's a time for that, but there's also a time for us to be out in the fresh air and the sunshine, sort of in nature, and just taking that moment to look around us and think about our place in this world. And sometimes I do that with my kids, and sometimes by myself, just take a walk and take the time to breathe. We know research is showing that yoga is taking on leaps and bounds in America now. It's an ancient Eastern practice that fuses mind and body. And why is it so popular now? Because it grounds us. It reminds us to breathe. At the focal point of the yoga practice is the breath. So if you can't just calm down and take a breath for a moment, you're not good for anyone. And that's why we're all recognizing we need that solitude. We need that time both alone and in nature to just get back to, what's the purpose of all this? What are we trying to do? What's the point here?
All these activities become scattershot.
Yes.
There's just not a focus to it. And I think a little bit of solitude, whether it be a child going off into a corner and reading a little while, or just being quiet or playing by themselves, or ourselves going off and doing that, huge value in that.
Absolutely.
To the family, because then you can bring yourself back a little bit better.
Sure, and I want to also bring up something about, being overprogrammed, and we want to introduce our children to so many great options. They have the luxury of so many activities.
Exactly.
But they're each individuals with their own special talents and skills, pretty much from birth. I'm sure you noticed that with your children. My kids, their personalities, when I look back, they were there day one. And they have their unique talents and skills, and other things that they're not so good at. And we need to clear the clutter a little bit so we can focus on who they are and let them carve their own path, because they will have their own tendencies and their own interests. And so if we try to open them up to every single thing and push them in a million directions, we're losing sight of who they are. And so at a certain point, it's important to let them direct what they want to get better at, what they want to spend their time doing. And if it's pottery and not soccer, okay, it's just, that's who they are. And I think in the clutter of overprogramming, we're losing sight of our uniqueness and our individuality, and it's really important to not let that go.
I think life clutter is a good phrase, a good way to do it, because I think we all do clutter up everything a little bit more than we probably should. We've talked about becoming a better individual with a little bit more, or a little bit less programming, a little bit more individual time. Let's talk a little bit about the family and family dynamics.
Okay.
As the family slows down a little bit, eliminates some of this clutter, what's the benefit of that?
Well, I have been writing for about 15 years about the importance of family dinner. And I think a lot of people's heads spin when they hear that, and they think, how am I going to make dinner? And how are we going to all sit down together? We have lacrosse, and we have this and that and the next thing. Well, if families can focus on maybe 2 dinners a week, maybe it's a weekend night and a weeknight where that's just your time together. If you can do more, great. But if you can carve out 2 family dinners, all the studies show that children who have dinner with their families more are less likely to get involved with drugs, are less likely to succumb to peer pressure, are likely to be more confident and do better in school, have higher grades. And it's because of that cohesion. It's because we're taking the time to sit down together to talk, put away the phones, put away the, all the different Xboxes and iTouches and everything, and just look at each other. Spend that time together. And as a family, we need that. The parents need it, the kids need it. They need to see us relate as adults to one another. They need to talk about their day and be heard. There's a wonderful article that I read recently in Ladies' Home Journal about a family that every Friday night, a different family member is the star. They get to choose what you have for dinner. They get to talk about something wonderful from their week or something challenging, and everybody focuses on them. And it just had this effect of glue. The family came so much closer together, and everybody got to be a star. And it was just once a week, and so you had your turn every 4 weeks or 5 weeks, depending on how many people in your family. But how beautiful is that? And it just takes the time to remind you that you're part of a unit and you're all there to be there together. If you can imagine if the person whose night it was to be the star was talking about a challenge, and the whole family, siblings and parents, was focused on, I don't know how to handle this, can you help me? How empowering and supportive that would be. So it's absolutely essential that we find time to connect as a family. It's important to divide and conquer, like you said, because that's how we can handle all these activities, but we have to all come together as a family too, both parents there, kids there, everybody looking at each other and recognizing we're something together. We really are.
There's just something about sharing over food as well.
Yes.
Isn't there?
Yes.
I mean, that's how we celebrate things through meals and food, and just to get together. When my kids were little, I thought to myself, all these studies came out, you have to have family dinners, and what's so hard about that? Family dinners, we eat dinner together every night. Right. Now it's so much more difficult. I'm thinking, as you were saying that, I'm thinking 2 nights a week. Okay, I could probably work that out. I'm trying to figure out ways of doing the 2 nights a week.
Right.
You would think that would be easy to do. And I remember having family dinners all the time when I was growing up, and it was much different.
Right. So, well, when I was growing up, my mom was a stay-at-home mom. We didn't have families that had the pressures for 2 incomes like we do today. And as you quoted at the beginning of the show, people are working more, they're earning less. And the costs are rising. Look at the cost of food, the cost of gas. Everything is so much more expensive, but our salaries aren't necessarily commensurate with those increases. And so either we need to change our expectations, modify how we live so that we don't have to work so hard, or we need to find those little pockets of opportunity to be together. And it doesn't have to be a Julia Child meal. You know, really, you could order pizza for that family dinner and just focus on the ability to sit together. It doesn't have to be gourmet. Obviously, if it's a healthy meal, I'm more on board with that, but there are times that I even can't do it. So twice a week, if we can, if that's our goal to shoot for, if we overshoot it, great. 3-4 dinners, awesome. Some weeks we're not going to be able to, but just, you know, by and large, 2 times a week, it's a good thing to shoot for.
That's an excellent thought. Are there other suggestions then? We were talking earlier about maybe getting to this point, suggestions on how to, you talked about stepping back, eliminating clutter, the family dinner. How about sharing activities, doing things as a family?
Well, especially as kids get older, exercising together. Great example, yesterday my daughter had a doctor's appointment, and so afterwards we had some time together. I dropped off the prescription, we parked the car at home, and we walked to the pharmacy to pick it up because it was going to take about a half hour. And we had that time to exercise. I walked a little slower than I would normally, but we got to talk. And I cherished that walk so much. So as your kids get older, exercise together. Do if you're going to do a marathon or you're going to undertake a large activity like that, do it as a family. You know, try and get involved in your children's hobbies. So if your children are involved in music or art, and you have an interest in it, try and take a class together, or be with them at their class. Don't sit outside and text, you know, catch up on your messages or do some work, which is valuable too, but be there when they're there. And that way, this shared time is also an activity time. So you're killing 2 birds with 1 stone and growing closer. I coach my son's soccer team, and I think it is my favorite activity of the week because, and I'm not paid for it, I'm not on my phone, I'm just there on the field with my kids, and my older kids like to help with our practices with the younger kids. So we're all involved and we're outside in the fresh air. It's my favorite thing that I do. It really is.
So that thing in particular, perhaps we need to weigh some things too. See which things have more value for the family and more value for our kids.
Right.
Because then we can be a little less scattered.
Right.
To do that.
I mean, it's great if we're earning money and we're you know, paying our bills and we have more to put in the bank. We can do more. We can take trips. But sometimes I take a step back and I think, do I need to earn as much as I do? Can I cut back in some way so that I can have a little more time? And it's a tough question, and answers don't come overnight. But giving yourself that freedom and that permission to lower your expectations for the material things in life will open up the possibilities for the quality things in life. You know, one of the things that we've mentioned a few times here is the texting and the technology and all of that. I think that families really need to set boundaries. So there should be times when the phones are off, parents and children. I think at night, and all studies point to this as well, all cell phones should be either in a common room of the house or in the parents' room charging, so that they're not in the children's rooms. The children are off at some point. Part of our overprogramming is that our brains don't stop. When we're constantly texting, we're on the computer, we need our brains to slow down. And there's a lot of stress injuries. They're not injuries we can see. They're not broken bones, but we're injuring our brains by being plugged in too much. And so at night or on the weekend or whenever, we need to have quiet time. And that's up to the parents to really enforce that for themselves as well as for the kids.
I think that's hard for some people to do.
Yes.
All this success, you know, it's how successful you are, how many things you're doing, it all, you know, equates to how well you're doing in life. And you always want to be on the top of the heap, and you always, you know, there's so many pressures on parents.
Sure.
It's good to be able to see how you've suggested to pull back and to share some time together. Are there any other things you wanted to add?
I think we've covered a lot of territory. I just think that time is fleeting, and you know, as we get older, we realize that, and I wouldn't want to miss these years for anything. You know, I waited a long time to have kids. A lot of us do nowadays, and we should really be in the moment and be here now. So I think it's important to slow down and recognize where we are and celebrate it. I really do.
Thank you. I'm so glad that you could take a few moments to talk with us today.
Thank you for having me on.
I appreciate it. Lynne Schreiber. We appreciate you being with us for the CYF Spotlight, and we'd like to have you join us again next time.